Hi, this is Chris Heiser from Internet 2 and University of Pennsylvania, and this is Grouper Training for End Users, the Lite UI Permissions, Part 1. I'll give an introduction to where the Lite UI is in the Grouper architecture, getting started with the Lite UI, showing permissions for a user, show who has a certain permission, show if a user has a see why that user has a permission, or in any report, why an assignment is being made. In part 2, we'll cover assigning a permission to a role, assigning a permission to a specific user in the context of a role, unassigning permissions, and advanced features could be in part 3. So the Lite UI is part of the UIs that are used for Grouper, and the permissions screens are in the Lite UI. The permission Lite UI is accessed by a deep link from another application, from the Grouper Administrative UI, from the Grouper Lite UI menu. And note that permissions are used in different ways in different applications. So you really need to know how the application that you're viewing or assigning permissions for uses them before you assign permissions. So basically, if you have a deep link, you can put that into the URL and that will go to the permission screen. Similarly, if you're in the admin UI, you can click on Lite UI and then go to Manage Attributes and Permissions and View or Assign Permissions. Or if you're in the Lite UI already, you can do the same thing from the Lite UI menu, and that will bring you to the View or Assign Permissions screen. The Permission Lite UI is a filter to show existing assignments. This report that displays shows immediate or direct and indirect or effective permission assignments. So you can see things that are directly assigned to a specific role or user, or you can see permissions that exist because of a certain inheritance somewhere else in the assignments. So if there are direct permissions in the report, you can unassign those. You can also assign new permissions. Role permissions apply to all subjects in the role. So if you assign a permission to a role, that means that any subject or entity or person that is in that role will effectively have that permission. And you can also assign permissions directly to a user in the context of a role. So if you have a user that's in a role and you want to assign a permission directly to that user but not to other users, then other users in that role, you can make that assignment. So one of the tasks you can do with this screen is you can show permissions for a user. If you select entity in the permission type, so not role but entity, and you find the user in the entity combo box, you can filter those permissions. So I will select entity. In the entity combo box, I will find the person that I want to show the permissions for, and I will click filter. Now I will see all the permissions that this user has. In the PTO admin role, they are assigned PTO audit permission, and it's the assign action. They're also assigned login, so they're able to log in, and they're assigned reports. And in the wiki application, they are a wiki admin, and they are assigned login, and they can have the view action for reports. Note that anything that's has this underlining has a tooltip on it. If you mouse over that text, you can see more information. You can also filter by a permission and see who has that permission. So again, select entity in the permission type, and optionally you can select a permission definition if you want to narrow the combo box search for permission resources. Then you find the permission in the permission resource combo box and filter them. So I'm at the screen again. I can select the permission type entity, and if I want to put in a if I don't put in a permission definition and I just start searching for permissions, notice that I see wiki permissions and PTO permissions. But if I know the permission definition that I want to filter on, let's just say I want to filter on wiki permission. Then as I start filtering in the permission resource combo box, I will only see permissions that are associated with that permission definition. And if I pick one of them and I click filter, then I will see all the assignments that are relevant for that one permission. So for wiki reports, Barry Brooks, Elizabeth Collins, and Barry Tarbuck all have that permission. And in this case, this checkbox means a immediate assignment. So Barry Tarbuck has an immediate assignment that I could unassign. These users have this assignment. In this case, the wiki role is assigned that permission, and they're in that role, and so they effectively have that permission. So in order to unassign that permission, you would have to remove them from that role, or remove that permission from that role, or disallow that permission. And we'll see a little bit more about that later. So you can also see if a user has a particular permission without showing one of the reports and trying to find either the user or that permission in the report. So select entity in the permission type. Optionally, you can select a permission definition like we did with the last screen. Then find the permission in the permission resource combo box, find the user in the entity combo box, and then filter the permissions. So if I want to know if Barry Brooks can log into PTO, I can first select the resource. Then I can search for the entity, then click the filter button, and I will see basically all the assignments for Barry Brooks and PTO login, and I can see this little green check mark means that this user does have this permission. And if I search for somebody else and they do not have that permission, or the action icon is a red X mark, then that user does not have that permission. If I want to see why a user has a certain permission, I can click in the permission report. There's a little context menu button next to the assignment, and then that will show the underlying assignments that affect the overall decision. Note that you can also filter by role. So if you wanted to know if this user had PTO login in the context of the role PTO user, you can see that they don't. But if they're an admin, you can see that they do, and that's another case where it's important to know how the application uses the permissions, because sometimes an application will flatten permissions so that if Barry Brooks is using PTO, whether he has the permission in the context of the admin role or the user role, he'll have that permission. Or maybe he has to select which role he's acting as, and if he's acting as a user, then he can't log in, but if he's acting as an admin, then he could. So if I want to know why he has this permission, it's not a direct assignment, so it's not exactly clear. I can click this little context menu button, and I can click Analyze Result. And basically what this says is there'll be a list of assignments here. In this case there's only one, and there's a role assignment for PTO admin that's assigned PTO login. So since there is a role assignment and Barry Brooks is in this role, then Barry Brooks effectively has this permission. Click on the quiz link in the video description to reinforce your knowledge of this topic. Thank you very much. Please see the info sheets, mailing lists, wiki downloads, etc. The demo server can show some of these examples, and there are more trainings at the Grouper Online Training Home.